Here's today's In Touch devotion.
Today's scripture reading begins in verse 54 of Luke chapter 22. Having arrested Jesus, they led him away and brought him to the house of the high priest. But Peter was following at a distance. After they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and had sat down together, Peter was sitting among them. And a servant girl, seeing him as he sat in the firelight and looking intently at him, said, "This man was with him too." But he denied it, saying, "Woman, I do not know him." A little later, another saw him and said, "You are one of them too." But Peter said, "Man, I am not." After about an hour had passed, another man began to insist, saying, "Certainly, this man also was with him, for he is a Galilean too." But Peter said, "Man, I do not know what you are talking about." Immediately, while he was still speaking, a rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had told him, "Before a rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly.
Peter's pride in his own cleverness and strength got in the way of God's purposes. Christ sought a servant leader to guide believers after he returned to heaven. The former fisherman was an impulsive know-it-all, but the Lord saw through Peter's arrogance to his potential. He knew that Peter's humiliation in today's scripture passage would challenge and mature him. When Jesus' words conflicted with Peter's opinions, the disciple boldly rebuked the teacher, and Christ would respond with a pointed reprimand meant to both silence and to teach, sometimes in the presence of Peter's peers. Ultimately, the disciple made a mistake in an area where he'd once felt great confidence, his commitment to die for the Lord. Instead, he denied Christ 3 times before the rooster crowed after Jesus was arrested. This final humiliation, witnessed by a group of strangers, shattered his self-assurance. Jesus chipped away at Peter's pride until the disciple gave up his notion that Christ was Israel's grand deliverer from Roman oppression. Achieving glory ceased to matter when he chose to focus on the Lord's plan for lasting personal salvation. And thanks to Peter's newfound humility, God had a servant leader. Are you hindering God's work in your life? You may not be able to see it right now, but God isn't afraid to reveal those areas for your good and His glory. The Lord humbled Peter and renewed him, and He will do the same for believers who yield to His will.